We did an amendment for Deerdon. It is within a strong neighborhoods area to collect tax increment within Deerdon. So the only area, clarification, the only area within strong neighborhoods where tax increment is collected is the Dearden Station area, narrowly defined. That's just starting its clock, along with strong neighborhoods.
Okay, so because the question I have as we look at this is where can this money be diverted?
Oh, the money can be spent in a lot of different places.
I understand.
Right.
And just because, we're putting this out and saying this is very nice and it might be able to use it to improve neighborhoods, but it also could be used for whatever pet project is sitting there with 6 members of the.
Yeah, we live in an elected democracy, and the elected representatives can decide how to distribute the resources. Part of what we're suggesting here is that we want to set out some policy guidance, and maybe even firmer than policy guidance, to the board. But yes, it is an elected democracy, and they do get to allocate the resources. Joan, and then Sam.
You had said that this was moving along much quicker than you had expected, and
Yes.
the draft is being reviewed. Do you have some kind of a timeline for when this might possibly be implemented?
Yes, I do. My hesitation is I'm trying to make sure I get the dates as close as possible. Let me go back into a little bit of esoteria to explain the speed first. In order, when you can begin collecting the taxes is dependent on when you pass the area, pass the amendment. So, and long story short, because there's a little bit of lag between when you pass and the sort of tax collection details that need to happen, you have to pass it, a December has to pass, and then that next year you begin to collect the tax increment. So there is a real pressure to get us in before that next, not this December, but next December deadline. And in fact, you have to be backed up substantially from that in order for the tax stuff to happen between the time of the passage and that December. So the deadline to hit that is right around May for a passage. So what you'd have is as soon as February, you'd have some preliminary draft documents that would begin to be developed and go out. And then February, March, April, May would be the time frame where documents would be in circulation, reviewed with a May adoption or consideration by the agency board / city council. Then a December would pass, and it would be the next fiscal year that the collection of the tax increment could begin. Hands here and here. Sir.
So, Kip, why don't they just extend the North San Jose past 2018?
They would love to extend North San Jose to 2018.
Can't they just declare it blight again?
No, it would take an act of the state legislature, and at this point, the last thing the state legislature wants to do with the passage of Prop 22 is give redevelopments or local governments increased control of those resources. So it would literally take an act of the state legislature and a signature of the governor, and there's nobody on either side of the bench or up or down that thinks that the extension of a redevelopment area is going to happen. One small exception, they did allow us to extend a year for each of the years that they took money from us. So we are applying for an extension for North San Jose for a year for the $63 million and another year for the $12
So
million.
can't they declare blight in another employment-rich area, Edenvale or something?
Edenvale is already a redevelopment area. We collect tax increment from there. Part of what it is the increment. So the reason North San Jose is so wonderful from a financing scheme is that it was unutilized, underutilized land at the time. If we went and got some prospering high-tech place and declared it blighted, even if we could make the argument and it would hold, the increment isn't going to necessarily wildly swing from agricultural land to Cisco is about as big as a swing as you can possibly imagine in at least recent human memory. So two things prevent us from doing that. One, we can't extend because of state legislature. Two, there aren't any areas that are eligible for that we could probably reasonably declare blighted. And even if we could, the increment from them would probably be negligible. The significant redevelopment area, the industrial areas are already in the redevelopment portfolio. Most of the rest is residential. That is a newer stock. There are some areas that probably got left out. In neighborhoods like Seven Trees are one that I would argue is actually a classic fit for that, but much of the rest of San Jose.
Well, the increment that you're talking about isn't a whole lot of money either.
Actually, it is. Because what you're seeing I mean, let's take Greater Gardner as an example. If I go back to my first meeting in Greater Gardner in October of 1998, and I look at the value of that neighborhood from a property piece, I'm not talking about the people in there, it was a valuable neighborhood in terms of people, but in terms of property, whoa, you wouldn't want to buy there, you wouldn't want to be there, school was in ruins. You go there now, and I know they're facing their issues, and Harvey and I have talked about this, but it's got a beautiful school, it's got more beautiful streets, there are a couple of segments left that aren't so beautiful. The park is great, the neighbors have rehabbed themselves. The value of that neighborhood is dramatically higher, and while it may not be realized immediately because of Prop 13, over time, as people sell and resell their homes, when the market comes back, that will be a huge, huge increase. And ironically, where you're going to see the most upbeat from this are from some of the neighborhoods that are perhaps most downtrodden. I mean, I'll look at Five Wounds and the dramatic changes in the last 10 years over there. Again, always been a valuable place in terms of people, but in terms of market value, it's dramatically more important than it is now. So we may be off on this is all prediction, so who knows, right? But these, if you get out here, you're looking at an increment of hundreds of millions of dollars conservatively.
So in that increment can only be used, is that citywide use, or is that?
It's redevelopment, it's restricted funds.
Redevelopment.
Redevelopment funds can only be used in 3 ways. They can be used for affordable housing anywhere in the city. They can be used within a project area for redevelopment purpose, eradicating either physical or economic blight. Or they can be used outside of a redevelopment area if the primary beneficiaries are within the redevelopment area. I'll give you a small example of this. So if you build a park, and most of the people who go to the park are actually in a redevelopment area, but the park itself is outside of a redevelopment area, you can make the argument that it's the primary beneficiaries of redevelopment, so you can use redevelopment funds to build the park. But that's fairly narrowly interpreted, and it's usually used for very proximate properties. So for all intents and purposes, with the exception of the 20% affordable housing, redevelopment funds are restricted in 2 ways, geographically and programmatically in terms of what they can use.
May I just interrupt for 1 moment? When I was, it is 8:30, and I was going to ask you if, 2 things. First of all, we could just go ahead and close the meeting,
Yep.
and if you'd be willing to stay.
I would love to. I have a child with a weapon in her hand at fencing who is needing to be picked up.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to have to go pick her up.
It's unfortunate that the Basket Community Library is there. She could probably go there if it was.
I would agree.
Yes. Arcadia,
Arcadia property.
yes.
Yes.
Will that be money-making, will that be, if that's in your list there, will that meet the necessity?
Well, as folks who've been in this, and you know, we've taken a lot of wax to the pinata on Arcadia. I believe that over the long haul, that ought to be a contributor to a great neighborhood. That ought to be redeveloped as a place which has parks which are financed by the development itself, which has affordable housing, which has retail, which has the things that Arcadia needs. When that happens, put it that way, when that happens, that will be a huge bump up in the tax increment.
What is that happening? It's been owned for 20 years, so.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Does this need to be passed by the voters, or how does this go and take effect?
This is an act of the redevelopment board and the city council. It requires 6 votes. And it requires that they make certain findings that have to meet state law, but it is an act of the redevelopment board and the city. Page back here.
Real quick,
Yes, sir.
on the Arcadia side, just looking at what you have up there, you don't qualify for no funds. See? But the money's gonna come out of the Arcadia. The effect of the traffic and everything else that goes with that market is gonna affect our neighborhood. But since our priorities have O&M attached to them, we get silly.
Well, part of what I would suggest that we'd have to do is we'd have to give every neighborhood the opportunity to reevaluate what their priorities are. And there's a lot of infrastructure improvement, there's a lot of rehabilitation, there's a lot of neighborhood change that is in fact O&M neutral. Like this, again, I could go on with different examples and maybe that's helpful. But in terms of, again, new projects that are expected to be staffed by increased numbers of city staff, that's not going to happen. And I think what is important to realize on that is that that's not just a product of this small equation. At this point, the city as a whole is not able to take on additional operations and maintenance obligations. What I'm doing here is simply codifying the reality of the city. Okay. So I appreciate your time. I present this for your understanding and your consideration. It is up to you to do with this information as you will. I want it to be as straightforward as I can about what I know and what I understand. I'm not necessarily trying to sell you on something. I will say that this would be the primary source of funding for strong neighborhoods. So and I know again, everybody's free to make up their own mind on where they stand on this. There's a lot of complexity to this. But without this, we do not have at this point an identified funding source for strong neighborhoods in the future. And I think that's important to understand with all this complexity. And I apologize for not being able to stay later, but I do have childcare.
Just one quick, so all this passed and everything went on the timeline that you suggested. When would the money first be collected?
2012, 2013 fiscal year, I believe, is when the first tax increment would come in. And again, part of what would happen right away is a lot of these obligations would have to be met with that. So in terms of when significant funding goes to the neighborhoods, that's probably a little bit farther out.
Two requests. One, can you give us a timeline on the areas outside strong neighborhoods?
Yes.
That would,
When they expire?
when they expire, so we would know
Yep.
what kind of pressures it would be to suck the money out.
Yeah, I've got it on my desk, and I'll scan that in and get that
And
out.
then the second thing is,
I'm writing this down so you'll-
currently, in the current law, the blight designation of strong neighborhoods for 30 years. Is that correct?
I do not know the limitation of the blight designation. I believe that,
That really is very limited.
John was talking 30-year plan. I will get you the expiration date.
So this would essentially,
It's a 50, I believe the there is 50 years strong neighborhood. I think it is that. But again, the last 10 you don't have the ability to do that. The county is a biggie, and we're in really complex negotiations. That's part of what's the difficulty. How does this work so that the county might be satisfied? And that's yet to be determined.
And that's not an open process.
No, that's a closed, confidential negotiation that I'm legally unable to comment on, other than we are in negotiation.
Okay, let's give a hand for that.
Sandra, can we officially close the meeting?
Yes, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Sign up for committees. Sign up.